Here we go. So we're going to do garbage now. We're going to talk about garbage today. I'd like to thank some people who have given me some positive feedback on these videos and said, well, they would be better if you would be quicker about it and not put your hand in your shirt and, generally do weird stuff. So thank you very much for that. And I've got a script here which will help keep everything on track. Part of my previous experiences were more of a stand-up and were more of a stand-up based teaching role. So there's a little bit of a difference between this kind of thing and what I had been doing, but I think that a lot of the skills that I had learned and gained from teaching and being a presenter are relevant to here. And I generally think we're trending in the right spot. So, yeah. Here we go. So we're going to talk about garbage today and how that affects, what all is entailed by garbage, because it's a big deal. First of all, I don't like to think of garbage as garbage. I mean, I do, but a lot of the stuff that is garbage is got value. Plastic bags, for instance. Plastic bags are in huge supply, but they do have some value well after you've got your groceries home, or however you get a plastic bag. If you reuse one indefinitely until it's broken, you can carry a lot of stuff with it, right? So there is value to things that we would classify as garbage that we may not take advantage of, but it's still there, and so we got to look at garbage from a different point of view in that there still is some value to those goods. They just may not be valuable to us. Hence, one man's trash is another man's come up or treasure. But thanks to the thrift shop, that's how it's going to be for me. So, landfills are on timers. Landfills are, it's a lot easier to fill them up than to open new ones. Most people don't want them near them, and they are ongoing environmental concerns. Like well after our landfill is full, that is still going to be, every time it's raining, all the batteries and all the stuff that, those mercury filled, government sanctioned nonetheless. That's an important one to note, is that it was really the government that put on the pressure to get those curlicues without any strategy of how we're going to recycle them and keep the long-term problems of having mercury in landfills. There was no oversight for that. So, those are going to be a long-term problem because, there's not really a obvious, and that's an important term here, is obvious way to recycle them effectively. People do want to, but it's difficult to find out when, where, maybe you had to work that day or whatever. So our landfills are a real problem, and as we move forward, our landfill is going to be full. Then what? The price is going to go up, and it's not going. It's only going to get more expensive. So what do we really need to do? Well, first of all, we need to identify most waste or garbage or, unrealized value is packaging. Most clothing ends up in a thrift store or St. Vincent de Paul or Salvation Army or Value Village, whatever. Most of it's hand-me-down, given away. It's consumed, and then once it gets to the point of not being used anymore, well, it's what do you use? A rag, and then once it's done being a rag, then it goes into the garbage. But there's really not much left of it by that time. And our food, well, some of it gets thrown out, but most of it ends up in the sanitation department. So And it's an organic, so it'll break down after a period of time. So most of the waste we have is packaging that consumers can deal with, that you and I can control. There's construction waste and all that kind of stuff, but that's just on a little bigger scale than the things we do, and a lot of construction waste has already been, the best practices with that are generally being started. You don't see steel being wasted or concrete going away because the recycling of those things has been very well developed and implemented. So most of it has to do with packaging of consumer products. And at least from a residential point of view, that's where we need to go. So I don't think there's waste anywhere else. It's just, what can we do now that will be relevant? So one of the things that I really enjoyed when I was a kid, well, I shouldn't say enjoyed. One of the things that stuck with me when I was a child was recycle, reduce, reuse, close the loop. You've got to close the loop. You remember that song? Anyway, so paper and plastics and glass are our primary things, but unfortunately, those three things, it's an expense to do them. So recycling is expensive, and it's a lot better than a landfill. Don't get me wrong about that. It's a better alternative than burying it and hoping that, in a couple of years, somebody smarter comes along to figure out how we're going to, deal with that problem, that ongoing pollution. But glass especially, is not effective to do because, well, sand is pretty inexpensive. So what we really need to focus on, if recycling is going to be expensive for a lot of consumer stuff, then reducing and reusing is more of where we need to go, is the direction we need to go down. And reducing and reusing is really dependent on cost. There's always been a lot of disagreement and, resistance to tagging garbage. But that is because nobody wants to pay for their waste. But you pay for it anyway. It's just through taxation. And unfortunately, taxation is not a specific way to pay for something. Your tax bill is what? I don't know, between $2,000 and $6,000 a year, probably, maybe more. But anyway, so what did you get for that $2,000 to $6,000? You don't see an itemized list on your tax payment or bill or anything of what you paid to what. So taxation's not very specific, and because of that, I think we should generally move away from it. And by tagging garbage, we would be able to put a price on garbage that reflects the cost of garbage, or I shouldn't, not garbage, of waste, right? And so if you're going to recycle something, how much did that cost? You should pay for it. And this would do some good stuff. A lot of people want to say, oh, that would be awful because all of a sudden you got to pay for garbage, but that's not really the case. You're paying for it anyway, you just don't know how much you're paying. And by that happening, by it being taken away from consumers and put on the back end, we've gone away from old techniques of reducing and reusing because now people don't have to pay for garbage. For instance, if you were consuming 5 garbage bags a day, or 5 garbage bags a week, if you were consuming to the level of producing 5 garbage bags a week, and you had to all of a sudden pay for that up front, you would change your habits. You would look at that and you would say, geez, man, I'm paying a huge amount for garbage. And people like me and the responsible folks who are like, okay, how are we going to, make sure we've got the numbers and put in the right blue box and, be responsible for garbage, we end up subsidizing these people that just waste, that consume at a high level and are not being responsible about it. And it's that angle that hasn't been put into the waste or garbage pickup conversation, and it needs to be there because I, for one, as well, especially for small children, diapers are an amazing amount of created amazing amount of landfill volume. If you were to imagine just every time you flush your toilet, instead of it going to the sanitation department and getting processed, it just ends up in a big pile. So how did I do that? How did our family reduce our diaper footprint? And we used a diaper service. Unfortunately, there aren't any in Brantford, but I would highly recommend it. I highly recommend the cloth diaper thing. You can do it yourself, obviously, or you can have a service do it, which is what I experienced. And it was great. They always make sure you have well more than enough. You never end up going to, Walmart or whatever on a diaper run at midnight because, you didn't, somebody, let's say it was a babysitter and they didn't tell you or whatever. You don't have to do that. That responsibility is no longer there. And it's not ending up in the landfill. Unfortunately, we don't pay for it individually anyway, so it's not like you'd see a big difference between having diapers go to the landfill or not, at least not right now. But if we had to take our garbage, you would see that happen, and all of a sudden, maybe our landfill gets to stay in a lot more. Because all of a sudden now people are more conscious about what they're throwing out. Another concept, or two, and I like to put these two together, is at Canadian Tire, I bought a vacuum, and I told them I didn't want to take the packaging home. So after a little bit of sweet talking and negotiation, I got them to assemble my vacuum cleaner, and I didn't have to take the packaging home. And if we look at that and we say, well, okay, well, what did that do? But let's consider it. Let's say 1,000 people, everybody that goes to Canadian Tire, leaves their, the styrofoam, the plastic container, and the cardboard. Let's say they leave it all there, right? Now what happens? Well, now there's not. Now there's one guy going with his recycle truck or whatever and gets to pick up 1,000 people's stuff in one location as opposed to picking up 1,000 people's refuse in 1,000 locations. Now we've just decreased, the amount of waste stayed the same, but we picked it all up in one shot instead of making thousands of stops and, paying that. And again, that price has to be paid and it's borne by the consumer. It is now through taxation and will be after if we do the tagging thing. Or if we do the tagging concept. And the second half of that is if we focused and changed a lot of bylaws, or even if we didn't change bylaws, but if we made it possible for people to reuse containers. For instance, anybody go to the bulk barn? Or, yeah, let's just use the bulk barn because that's simple enough. I think a lot of us are experienced with it because when you're a kid and you wanted candy, the theater was a ripoff, so of course you went across the way there at the old Brantford Mall to get the bulk barn's Sour Kids or whatever was there. They have to give everything away in bags right now. But maybe a business case could be made or a service could be made that You could have a reusable container. Again, and I don't really want to go down this road, other than a brief conceptual or philosophical idea, and said, if you could reuse your own container, you could go there, fill it up. They're resisting that idea, so fine, whatever. But maybe there could be an exchange where, kind of like I just pointed at my barbecue, so a fuel container, or propane tank, right? You go there, you exchange it, you get a new one. Something along that concept, where you go there, you let them clean it, bring it up to their standard, and then you can go from there. And that would really reduce a lot of packaging, which is what residential waste tends to be, is a lot of packaging. So yeah, yard waste, again. I don't think it's a huge concern because, it's organic, it breaks down, it could be used for a number of different things, and the long-term problems with yard waste are not anything like, light bulbs or batteries or contaminants or anything like that. Tagging, how would we facilitate tagging? I think that online and having tags mailed out to people would easily be the most effective solution. And yeah, I'm not going to say the garbage thing is an immediate concern. I think we're probably about in the 10 to 20 years away from it being like right up in our faces, and we're going to have to change something. So, the sooner the better. It's just like if you send your children off to school just this week, getting them back on their routine sooner rather than later is better, because if you get them, if they've been staying up till 9 p.m. for the summer and all of a sudden they got to get up at 7 or 7:30 or 6:30 or whatever, if they're used to going to bed at 9, then when they wake up in the morning to go to school, they're going to be tired. It takes about a week to get on that. So this issue, the garbage issue, is more of a habitual one at the moment. But by putting the price in it, the price system is the most powerful system of evaluation that humanity has devised. And if we implement that with garbage or with waste, we will be able to do a far more effective job at dealing with that cost and coming up with solutions to those problems. So again, yeah, landfills are an ongoing problem. Let's move away from them. Let's start implementing and practicing some environmental stewardship. So that's my position on, and my philosophy on waste management, I guess is a good term, and a plug for the company, Waste Management. So yeah, thank you very much. Sorry, it was still a little long. I'm seeing we're at about the 19-minute mark, but I hope it was a little more killer and a little less filler. So thank you very much. See you soon. Oh, please like and share. Dave Swanson, Ward 5.